Hey guys, welcome back. This is Rama from the Cherished You. This is the CherishTV, another episode, another blog post that goes with it. So if you want to check out additional thoughts that I had after I recorded the blog post, you can check it out by clicking the link below. Please follow, subscribe, share if you think somebody else might this might help someone else, and thank you. Okay, so now that that's all out of the way, this week I've been doing a lot of brainstorming, like a lot of creativity work, and what I've kind of come around to is showing what my new goal is right now is to actually show people what healing looks like. In the healing communities that I'm in, the spiritual communities that I'm in, everyone talks about their shit, and either you talk about it like with me where I share it after I've gone through it, but you lose some of the emotionalness of it, and you miss kind of like the nitty-gritty details of how messy it can be. And then on the flip side of that, it seems like there are other people who in the same communities who overshare to such a degree where it just seems like they're whining all the time. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, I'm saying that's what it comes off to me. And I, like I said, that might not be their intention, and that may not be how some people perceive it. That's just my perception of it. So what I wanted to do is kind of find, again, what I always do is find this middle ground between those two extremes in my mind. And one of the questions that I kept coming back to was, how do you know when it's time to get some help from somebody else and when you have to go it alone? And this comes up a lot because as I'm in these communities and I'm watching different people in different circumstances, different age groups, different different parts of the world, and there's this disconnect about what coaching really is and how it can help you and also how it can hurt you. So I'm going to share a little bit about my experience and then kind of move into where I'm going with this. So I, in earnest, kind of started my healing journey in 2011. I had gone through a lot of shit at that point. I was getting back to med school after taking a break for personal reasons, and then when I was getting into it, I finally was living alone again. The couple of years before that point, I was living with my parents, but I went back to living alone. I was in a new city, and I was living alone. And it always seems like I do, at least at that point in my life, I did a lot of my best work when I was by myself. I needed to, I felt like I had lost a lot of who I was because I didn't ever have a clear idea of who I was. But even the idea of what I had was not available to me anymore. And so I went, as I'm going back to med school and I'm going through, just changing cities, getting back into a mode where I'm in school and then studying and then I'm working part-time as well. I made a conscious effort to change some things. I knew there was stuff about myself that I wasn't proud of, and I wanted to kind of go in and make some changes and just to be a better person. I really had nothing other than that. Like, I was like, when I want to have a solid relationship with someone, and that was my underlying kind of impetus for wanting to make some changes. So I'm going through this whole process, and I'm in school at the time, And a lot of things keep coming up. It was during this time that I learned about nutrition, proper nutrition. I implemented that knowledge. I saw changes in myself as a result of it. I also was experiencing a lot of dissonance with medicine at the time. I was in the clinical half of medical school, so you're just spending a few weeks in each specialty doing your rotations. And I knew that I wanted to go into psychiatry, so I took extra rotations in that one, in internal medicine, just to kind of get a general feel of everything. And what I saw over and over again, what kept bothering me, that had I not been on this journey, I don't think I would have understood until it was way later down the line. That would have probably presented itself with its own host of problems. But when I was going through all of these things, like I'm changing my body and I'm changing my relationship with my body and my relationship with food, and at the same time I'm experiencing this very rapid difference in the profession that I thought I've always wanted to be in. And so in a way I was having an existential crisis, because I was experiencing a difference in what I thought I was going to do. Like, that was my whole identity was really created around that I was going to be the doctor. And all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know if medicine is what I want to do for the rest of my life, because I think I'll kill myself with this. And I meant that seriously. Like I didn't know what to do with it. At the same time, I'm also learning all of this other information that I realized that we weren't taught in med school, and then I'm kind of seeing this, oh crap, this is not all it's cracked up to be, and I need to take some inventory and see this is my cat, what is what with me. And so the next couple of years, next 3 years almost, while I was going through rotations and thought about quitting school every day, but just didn't have the means of doing so yet, I didn't have anyone that I could go to. There isn't a coach for women who are at the time I didn't know there were coaches for women who were looking to leave their lives the way they had been set up to live different ones. There was, I was in therapy off and on at the time. It wasn't every week, the way it would become, actually no, in that time I did. 2013 was a big year for me when I was in therapy a lot. But before that, the couple years before that, when the crisis was really happening, and eventually what prompted, it pushed me into looking for a therapist in a new city, But I hadn't started, before this therapy had started, I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I didn't know who to go to. Therapy I ended up choosing because it was the only thing that I could find that was, that kind of made sense as to they might be able to help me figure out what the fuck is going on with me. Now, you also have to understand that I am, at the time, I was not somebody who knew I had intuitive gifts. I didn't know I had as strong of an intuition that I do. I knew nothing about energy or energy management. I knew nothing about self-care. I was just learning new things, and I was getting hit with them every day, and I couldn't get enough. All I know that this was completely opposite of what I had lived my life knowing and what I knew, and everything was different now, and that was the only thing I knew, but I didn't know what to do with it. So therapy was helpful in the sense that it taught me how to listen to my head without feeling attacked by my thoughts, because sometimes my thoughts had very important messages for me that made me feel like, God damn, I don't want anyone telling me this right now. I don't want to hear this. This is things that, this is something I need to take care of. And then other times it would, because I was still depressed at the time, there was still a period where I would go back and forth, and seasonal depression has always been a thing. So I would go back and forth a lot, and it was just like, what else? Like, I don't know what to do with this, and I heard that in my head, and therapy kind of helped me unpack my brain. What I really was looking for was someone to help me unpack my emotions. And now I'm not sure if this was because of the therapist that I had. I know it wasn't because I wasn't emotional in my sessions, because I would cry almost every session. But, and I honestly don't think it was the therapist that I had. I think this is just how therapy is, where it really just helps you do the more mental work versus the emotional work. But, eventually I found a solution for myself, and I found health coaching. I went and got certified as a health coach. I postponed my graduation for med school by just not completing paperwork for a year. Like, that's how I was like, I'm just not going to look at this. It was my avoidance. Eventually I ended up completing the paperwork, and then had to deal with telling my parents, which is like this big thing I had created in my head, which I'm very good at doing, where I was like, I'm not continuing forward right now. I'm just going to work on health coaching instead. And I loved health coaching. And then when it came around to running that as a business, which was 2016, really, late 2015, 2016, I got very focused on finding a business coach, because I was convinced I had no idea what I was doing, because I never, I had not really run a business. I had seen my parents run a business, and I knew the ins and outs of that, but I didn't know how to run a business, and I definitely didn't know how to run one online. So I did the kind of a complete opposite. Like, during my awakening and my self-help, like self-healing journey, when it started, coaches weren't something that I knew existed. Like, even when I heard about a health coach for the first time, I was like, wow, this is a thing. I don't have to do it. As a doctor, I can still help people in this other way, still using the knowledge that I had. That was kind of amazing. But I didn't have anyone to talk to about it at the time, right? And then all of a sudden I go into building a business, and online there's business coaches coming out of every wazoo, wherever you go. And I kind of went flip-flopped, and I went from not having anyone to having all of these options, and feeling compelled to take all of these options, because I was so convinced I had no idea what I was doing. And so eventually I ended up throwing a lot of money at a lot of different coaches, because I was convinced that they would somehow help me create a profitable business, and B, they would help me fix myself so I could run the business, because somehow there was something wrong with me, and that's why I couldn't create this thing, and that's why I couldn't run this thing. Turns out that there was really only one investment out of the 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 or 7 different coaches I hired. Only one, and it was the last one I took, which just shows you how many times it takes you to figure out who the right person for you is, especially when you have no real sense of who you are. And that was very true. I was floundering, even as a health coach. I was still floundering of trying to create a new identity for myself after deciding that medicine wasn't it, and I wasn't going to be a doctor. But it was the last coach that I found who I did not work with the entire time we were slated to, because I ended up moving, and there were issues and all of that. But for the time that I did work with her, her work was the most impactful, because I was ready for it. Oh, I'm not saying the other coaches that I hired or the other courses that I took weren't helpful. They were, but I was not secure enough in myself to take on what they were teaching. I thought I was looking for someone to help me fix a certain problem, And they offered that solution, and they took my money also because of it. But the bigger thing was that I wasn't ready yet, because I had this other stuff to do. And what happened with my last coach was that she helped me unpack the emotional shit to see it a little bit more clearly, for me to not be so scared of what I was feeling, because it was so strong. And a lot of it was very angry. So, anger in women is like this lifelong battle that we have in this current era that we have to deal with. But I didn't know how to deal with that anger. And she helped me kind of unpack it. I was, as a result of that work with her, and what she really helped me learn was what my intuition felt like, because I had no clue, even though I would hear, and every once in a while I would listen to it, but I couldn't tell the difference between my depressed mind, my anxious mind, or my intuition, or just an overactive nervous system. Like, I couldn't tell the difference between all of those things, because everything was always happening at once. And there is a period in your journey where that is true. You are going to experience everything all at once, because it's like opening Pandora's box. And unless you have somebody who is there, who's going to help you and to realize that you are okay, it can be very scary when you're going about it by yourself. But with my last coach, what I learned with her were all of the skills I needed modeled for me, because I didn't know how to do that for myself yet. Now, this was not, it wasn't so much about practical things to do. It was more of how to work with the energy that's coming from within you. So Katie, who was my last coach, she really taught me, how to hold space for myself. That was not something that I was really good at. I could do it for other people, but I didn't know how to do it for myself, and I didn't know that I was not doing it for myself. I thought I was. Turns out that was not the case. But holding space for myself, because a lot of people don't understand what that is. She also helped model for me showing up and consistent action. Now, these are two things that I am at the time was very sensitive about, because I felt that I was not a hard worker, because I didn't like to overextend myself. And I thought that made me a bad business owner. I thought it made me a bad coach, because I didn't want to overexert myself. Turns out that is my saving grace. That's why I teach self-care. But at the time, I didn't know that, and I berated myself for just this integral part of myself, who I am, because my perception of it was, you don't want to work hard enough, where that's not true. I work hard plenty. I don't want to burn myself out. So the showing up, consistent effort, but like small things every day. It's not even like a super big thing. It's just small things every day. She modeled holding space for myself, and she helped show me my strengths when I didn't believe in them. I heard this term yesterday on a podcast. I'll put the links down for the podcast below. This is a really cool podcast. This is actually a coach I've been following since I first started my journey. She was one of the very first groups that I joined. We both have the same birthday, which is pretty cool. But Lacey Seitz, she's from A Lit Up Life. She just launched a podcast called Literally. It's really, really cool. I think you guys should all go check it out, especially if you are looking to run your own business or create your own business. I think this is something really helpful. But anyway, I was listening to the first episode yesterday, or the second episode yesterday, and she mentioned something called borrowing your coach's belief. And that was something I did with Katie, which was I didn't believe, I intellectually knew I had a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge. I didn't believe in them in a heart space and in an emotional level. I did not believe in them, but she did. And so I was able to borrow that for a long enough time to be able to create the beginnings of what the Cherish You would be. At the time, my company was not called that. At the time, that's not what my near my accounts were called. But all of that information, when I created the Cherish You, in that was all of that information got used. And the reason I was able to create that, and I firmly believe this, that everything happens in its sequence for a reason. And that process with Katie let me create the foundation of what the Cherish You is based on, what I teach, and what my core principles are. I don't think I would have gotten there without her help. And without her belief in what I was doing at that time. So, long way through. I made 6 or 7 investments. I think I'm definitely forgetting one, but let's for now just say it's 7 investments in coaching. It was my last one, and only 1 out of 7, where I feel A, that the coach was in it for the right reasons, B, I was in there for the right reasons, and C, I got the most out of. After that point, a lot of my work has been on my own. That's because I'm at the point now in my journey where I know how to implement what I learn. There was a point where I didn't know how to do that. That was also something I learned from Katie, was now how to ground the knowledge that I've acquired. How to bring it into the world in a practical way. And that's why a lot of what I do is self-care is like this practical spirituality. Spirituality can be really up in the clouds and very formless in its structure, or lack thereof, really. And then practicality can be very down in the dumps, very nitty-gritty, very boring. And I really think and I try to bridge that gap. Again, that's what I do. But a lot of that comes from having someone who was better at it than I was, and was able to show me what that looked like. And yes, I hired her for that reason. Although I think she picked me. But that's also another thing, was that when I started working with her, there was this sense of, okay, you believe in me, so there must be something that I can do. And I think it's that borrowing belief thing again that I'm borrowing from Lacey. So really if you're at a point in your journey and you've thrown a lot of money at coaches and you're like, I haven't gotten anything out of it, it's really important to know before you throw money at the same problem again. A, is there really a problem there? Is the problem what you think it is, or are you hiding from the real problem because this problem seems solvable? Second, is there something that, it's not necessarily that you're going to learn something from a coach, but is there something that you need modeled for you, some sort of behavior that you don't know what it looks like, you've never experienced it in your life in a healthy way, but is there a behavior you need modeled that you need someone's help for, that you need either a coach or a therapist or something for? Because I think that's really the majority of what like our awakening, our spirituality, our self-care journey is about. It's, yes, there's this, I always mention the fact that your body is the one tool you have. You need to take care of it, and that's important. And that's the very practical way of what self-care does. But really, on a more soul level, what self-care does is it's about being the best version of you. And if the best version of you is able to clearly communicate, but you have no one around you who clearly communicates, maybe it's time to work with someone who can help you clearly communicate. And then A, is a clear communicator, and B, forces you to be a clear communicator, won't let you get away with that kind of thing. with anything less than clear communication. If you're someone like me and you don't know what holding space is, or what that means, what that looks like, that alone, learning that from Katie alone was worth it for me, because it's something that I realized that I was a natural at, but B, it tapped into another layer of myself that made me fall in love with myself in a different way, but even deeper. And that's kind of like, that's the point, of all of this, is just to be your biggest fan. And it's really, it's hard to do that if you don't know what that looks like. And sometimes you do have to ask for help in a certain skill. And what are coaches? Coaches are just people who are going to help you stay accountable so that you don't mail it in. So you don't get stuck in that cycle of betrayal and distrust with yourself. And you show up for yourself and you follow through and you do the little things even when you don't want to. They provide you with a little bit of structure, and they provide you with the skills to acquire a new skill. Like holding space, I think, is natural for a lot of people. They just don't know how to tap into it. Intuition is natural for everybody. We just tend to block it out or ignore it. Or we don't know how our intuition speaks to us. So all of those things are perfectly solvable, but you can either do it yourself, and like I did for a while, and it's a lot like, throwing spaghetti at the wall and being like, I hope this one works. And then even if it works, you're not quite sure if it works until you've tried something that doesn't work. And you kind of go back and forth in this whole thing. So really what I'm trying to, I hope that comes across is, you need to ask yourself, what is it that I'm looking for a coach to provide for me? For me, really the biggest thing was, I need someone who's going to unlock my greatness, because I somehow can't find the right key. Or help me find the key that will help unlock the greatness in me, Like, I was always very like, help me figure me out. Because don't figure me out for me, help me figure it out. And I think that's also why I coach the way that I coach, is that I will give you the tools. I will tell you how the tools work, how to use the tools for yourself. But I'm not going to give you the answers, because you need to be sure in the answers, and you need to know that if you can find the answers to these questions, you can find the answer to any question, ever, under any circumstance. And that's really what it's about. I'm like a teach you how to fish kind of person, rather than fish and give it to you. Like, I'm gonna teach you how to fish. And that is, it takes a very particular kind of person to want to undergo that. It's also why I don't have a lot of one-on-one clients anymore. Actually, currently I don't have any because I stopped it. But it's really, I teach differently. I don't give answers, and a lot of people do come to, especially when I was as a health coach, for the answers, and I was just never one of those. But I do appreciate all. I do appreciate all the people who did help me uncover layers of myself. But really, the right coach will teach you how to find your own answers. The right teacher will do that. The right coach will do that. So really ask yourself what it is that you're looking for. And is it a cop-out? Sometimes, like I've done this too. Like when I was just hiring coach after coach, it was like, oh, okay, I didn't figure it out in the last one. Also, I didn't completely invest myself in doing the work on that one, and I didn't follow through, and I was too busy, and this, that, and the other. Or am I ready to deal with whatever comes? And also, just because you pay for something does not mean that you are invested. This is something I know for true, to be true, because I know that for a lot of people, when you put money down, you'll follow through on it. I happen, especially when I'm going through a lot of shit, I will throw money at stuff to make myself feel better. I've done that in the past. I don't do it anymore, but I used to. I will throw money at a problem hoping it will go away and I won't have to deal with it. So it's important to know where you fall on that spectrum. Do you need something modeled for you that you don't know how to do right now? And no one before you has, and it's not available in your environment. Or are you looking to throw money at a problem and avoid doing the work? Because based on that answer, it'll tell you, you'll know if you need to hire another coach. And and you'll also know whether you're looking at the right coach. I want to let you guys know that I will be changing my offerings at the end of April. So you guys have a month to, if you have a coupon, to use it, because at the end of April, those coupons that anyone who hasn't used theirs, they will expire then. Just so you know, April 30th is the last day to use them. They will not be available at that point. I originally don't think I put a expiration date on them, but my packages and my services are all going to change. So those codes are not going to be applicable in that and with the new offerings. So if you want to get anything in, get those booked in soon. You can book out till June, July, somewhere in there. Yeah, once I change everything over, whatever you guys have as far as discounts or access to sessions, they're not going to exist. What else did I think that was it. Anyway, thanks for, if you guys hung in there this whole time, thanks for hanging in there. I appreciate it. And I will talk to you all soon. But be sure to like, subscribe, share, all that fun jazz. I really appreciate it for everyone who does. And yeah, I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.